Alright everyone, we start off today talking about CHUD versus THUD. Right now, MAGA's riding high, Boebert just winning by a 30-point margin, etc., etc. Other than Georgia, which appears to continue to be moving blue, and part of that is the weakness of Herschel Walker, I will admit, and Stacey Abrams is tied in her race, so as far as the gubernatorial slot there, she might get Hillary Clinton the second time. CHUD is riding high in the wake of Bruin, of Roe, certainly the economy, etc., etc. Trump's candidates are knocking it out of the park. Even the neocons are holding their own in their polling. Who's losing? It is THUD. That's the new acronym for Joe Biden. There's no other word really to use for it. We're going to look at a little bit of polling. You can follow along. Link in the description, of course. First and foremost, though, keep in mind, for all of the newcomers, of which there are quite a few of you, there will be a pinned comment if you're watching this video on YouTube with links to other video hosting sites that I use. Keep in mind that I make exclusive content every single day on those platforms that doesn't make it onto YouTube. I usually make 3 videos, and the extra video goes on just those sites. It doesn't go on YouTube. It's usually too spicy for YouTube. You can't talk about certain political or medical topics anymore on YouTube without getting demoted at best and banned at worst. So I've decided to branch out. Been doing it for a while. Go through the back catalog. If you're a newcomer to the channel, you'll find lots and lots of cool shit there that you'll probably like to watch. But right now, it's time to talk about polls. The latest Biden polling has come in. Keep in mind that a lot of these are post-Roe, post-Bruin, etc. Now, supposedly, those were supposed to energize the Democratic base. Instead, arguably, Biden, at least, as an individual, has suffered a great loss from this. I think the other day, 2 of these new polls came out while I was live streaming. We had Rasmussen and Reuters. Both of them show about the same approval and disapproval as in the aggregate, so they're right in the middle of the mark. Somewhere close to that number, 38% approval and near 60% disapproval. Somewhere reasonably, tolerably close to that is the real mark. It could be a little bit higher, a little bit lower on either end. This is the nature of statistics. This is why we use an aggregate. This is why we don't fixate on any singular polls here in Clankdom. Just for those that aren't aware, I will never care about a singular poll unless it's like really out there, and then it becomes interesting because it's out there, statistical noise usually. Here's what I think. The other day when I reacted live, I was confused because I'm thinking not that much has changed, like with regards to the economy. Inflation's still high. Gas prices are still high. None of that has changed. Why would Biden suddenly hemorrhage roughly 4 points of approval over the course of a few short weeks when there's really nothing new? And then it dawned on me, and I had covered it several days before in a video with regards to Roe. I think that it's a bunch of leftoids actually abandoning any support for Biden because he's not doing anything that they want him to do on things like Roe. He hasn't taken any action. Kamala has a similar problem. You'll remember her initial tweet reaction to Roe v. Wade was summed up by the left, by people who care about abortion and they're pro-choice, as thoughts and prayers, the tweet. It's optically poor if your party includes that core of younger leftist voters that are more id poll driven, that are in many cases single or near single issue driven. It's not a good way to ingratiate yourself to them. Biden has an even greater problem because he's old, white, and male. So optically, he already has a disadvantage with the left. This is why Kamala was chosen as VP in the first place. It's literally just optics. By the way, there were other better alternatives, I think, than Kamala. Somehow, her approval's even lower. Her favorable ratings right now are so low that, she's giving Nancy Pelosi a run for her money as far as the unpopularity circuit goes. I'm thinking that this mainly has to do with a series of tactical losses by the Democrats. Roe is the big one, but it's not the only one. Today, by the way, I may live stream later because we're probably going to get an EPA decision, but we've got relatives visiting and I've got to cook chili. For the first time, I'm going to learn how to make chili con carne, so don't worry, all of the people out there worried that I'm not getting my meat. It's going to be a pile of fucking hamburger in that shit. Lots and lots of kidney beans too, by the way. Some black beans, etc. I think it'll turn out fairly well. And try to get Liz to make cornbread. She makes good breads, by the way. Good at baking. When I look at the approval, upon further analysis. The only thing I can think of is that, and the other part is partially economic. There are a lot of NIMBYist suburban liberals in the solid middle class with sweaters and NPR cups, and these people are reluctant to not support the Democrats. It's very fashionable to do that because NPR and PBS tell them to do so. Taxpayer money being used for a bit of political wonk propaganda. These people had enough savings, especially after the stimulus, which was passed, to weather the current Bidenflation for some months. They've begun to take out credit lines to make ends meet. This is solid middle class people. They've burned through the savings, and now they're either cutting corners and limiting spending, which they don't like to do because they're all NIMBYist, materialist, vapid sellout whores, or they have to take out a credit line. You usually have to pay that back, by the way, and then interest rates happen to be rising. Wonderful timing, guys. You should have just tightened your belts and fucking dealt with it. These people in the middle class, I think at this inflection point, they have begun to abandon Joe Biden. This makes him effectively a lame duck unless the economy magically improves by a significant margin. That damage, especially the taking out of credit lines to make ends meet, is not going to go away even if the inflation tomorrow were to go to zero. It would still be there. And by the way, you're probably going to drive joblessness up fairly soon. Even if you don't get a declaration of a recession in the coming month, you will get a declaration of stagflation, I think. And that's something that I had predicted would happen around this time. I think I predicted that 3 or 4 months ago, that this would be the particular point. And then it gets worse for Joe Biden and for the Democrats. It gets worse because the fertilizer prices and the effect on farming and price hikes there as the result of higher diesel costs especially, they're not going to show up until roughly the end of July and into August. Things are going to fall apart at that point in late summer, early autumn. Through August and September is when it's really going to get bad. This just happens to be a couple months before midterms. I made an exclusive the other day talking about an interesting hot mic moment between Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron, the leader of France, the Führer of France, Jupiter himself. And Biden was trying to convince him to lean on the Saudi Arabians, I guess, to up their oil output. Macron had to take Grandpa's arm and do the, hey, it's time to go into a nursing home thing. You need assisted living. You're not the man you used to be. That uncomfortable conversation sort of thing. And you could see it in his goddamn eyes that he was like, Biden's fucking lost it. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He looked concerned for Biden's mental health. I think that we all are at this point. Judging by this, even solid middle-class liberal voters are beginning to wonder. And they've got huge cognitive dissonance. And he had to explain, look, you know, it takes, yeah, we can do that, but it takes 6 months for the oil prices to go down as a result of that because it takes a long time to set up the refining and the rigs and shit like that. It takes logistics. Biden doesn't know what the hell he's doing with regards to these things. So when I look at the new polling, and when I look at the congressional ballot polling, there's been no appreciable change in favor of the Democrats, even though one of the greatest potential platform issues of all time, which is Roe, was put on the table by SCOTUS. But they didn't seize upon it. The neoliberals aren't doing anything about it, and the leftoids have gone full Northam and are saying you need post-birth abortions that are taxpayer funded at the federal level, and these things just, they can't coexist. This is more evidence of the same schismatic, fractious tendencies that I've spoken of now for half a decade with regards to the Democratic Party. It's impossible to have a big tent party in which you have core neoliberalism and leftoids under the same umbrella. Unless the leftoids are willing to deal with you perpetually promising the moon on a stick to them and then not delivering anything but a couple of fucking breadcrumbs. That age has ended. That's the last century's paradigm, almost more than the modern century, and certainly by the 2010s was already on its last leg. Now in the 20s, in the boring 20s, THUD is the name of the day. Joe Biden has landed with a thud. I don't know where his approval will bottom. He'll hit some other, he's gone past the soft bottom in approval and the soft ceiling of disapproval. He's gone past that. That's old news. He's now considerably, he's 4 points less approved of than Trump was at this point in his presidency. To be clear, this polling would be worse than Trump had polling right after January 6th. It's several points worse than that. There was only one point in his entire presidency that Trump hit lows that were very slightly worse than this, and that was in December of 2017. Very quickly, that was reabsorbed because the economy was going well. Biden doesn't have that advantage, and all of this is happening while Joe Biden gets handled with kid gloves by the legacy media. I think that the Democrats will get crushed in the midterms, partially because of this. They will blame Biden, the sharks will begin circling, and if he's crazy enough to run, he may actually get primaried. Somebody like Hillary Clinton might really do the enough is enough line and slam-a-jamma him. Oh boy, I can't wait till after the midterms. That's about all. Peace out.